Oh no, it's the U phone. By what company is it? Are they called Pear or are they called Banana? I don't remember either. Yeah, we've been kind of heavily invested in the Apple ecosystem, which is a place that not very many people should ever go, because once you get this far in, you are basically stuck using Apple's proprietary software, and there's not much that you can do about it unless you're really, really good at modding electronics. But at this point, I was kind of born into this ecosystem. This is my iPhone that is actually being used to record this video right now, hence why if I open the phone, there's nothing in there. But needless to say, we like Apple stuff. Mainly because it's usually made out of really good stuff, and even though it is really expensive, it lasts a really long time. We're able to get a ton of usage out of it with a lot less problems than some other types of devices. The only problem is when we introduce something that isn't an Apple product, it doesn't know how to communicate with all of our Apple crap. And somehow that even spans as far as VR headsets. This is my Vive Cosmos, and it is meant to be a PC-enabled headset. But when it doesn't work with the PC anymore, I'm completely out of luck. And that's kind of what started happening. This headset is starting to reach its age. I mean, I got it back in 2017, and no longer does it actually work with my PC properly. It never tracks properly, it jitters all over the place. It's a disaster, and oh my god, it's leaving crumbs everywhere. This is the worst day ever. Stupid thing left crumbs all over my freaking crappy set. But yeah, at the point that I'm at right now in my life, a new VR thing is something that I've honestly been wanting to look into for a while. So, why is the iPhone and Apple involved in this at all? Yeah, this is why. This is a real thing that came out in February. This right here is the Apple Vision Pro. And if you still don't believe me that Apple, the phone and computer company, made a freaking VR headset, bam! How much more proof do you need? It's got the Apple logo right next to it, and it is an absolutely gargantuan box. This box is genuinely bigger than the box that this thing came in over here. This box is absolutely massive, and when it's full of all of its stuff, it weighs a ton. It weighs a lot, but it is dense. And yes, I said when it includes all of its stuff. It's time for us to play a little game. How much stuff do you think is in the box? Keep in mind the referee we have is the iPhone box over here, which contained the phone and the charging cable. And that's it. It literally just contained those two things. Oh yeah, and instructions. It contained those as well. Well, first of all, you have the Apple Vision Pro, which is this thing right here, and it has the two speaker things already built in and you can't take them off. So, okay, what else does it have? Maybe it has a head strap or something? Maybe it comes with a battery cable? Alrighty, here we go. You get a light seal. You get a light seal cushion. You get another light seal cushion. You get a cleaning cloth. You get a sock to cover the front lens thing. You get a headband strap. You get another headband strap. You get, oh my god, the battery over here. You get the battery's cable, which is over here. You get a charging cable. You get a charging cable brick. And you get the instructions. All this stuff was in the box. There is actually so much stuff included with this headset that it almost doesn't fit in frame. This is one of the very few and far between cases where an Apple product actually comes with all the stuff that you could ever want and need to use with the product. I genuinely don't see any reason to purchase any accessories for this thing except maybe the travel case if you plan on traveling with this thing, because there's so much here that there's nowhere else to put it. And legitimately, before we talk about anything software related, we need to go over the hardware, because seriously, the value that you get just out of the build quality of every single piece that you see here, I would say probably justifies a good chunk of the Apple Vision Pro's overpriced price tag. Remember, this thing almost costs $4,000. That's $3,500 for the base model, not including tax. So you are basically going to be paying a truck's worth of money for this nugget and all of the stuff that it comes with. So before we get into all of this stuff, we gotta talk about the nugget. We gotta talk about the nugget. This headset is made beautifully. It is without a doubt the best feeling VR thing I have ever seen in my entire life, and it completely smashes this thing to death. Like, legitimately, let's see, which one is more insecure? This thing is so big that it genuinely needs its own shelf to sit on, while this one, honest to God, doesn't take up much more space than my everyday pair of glasses. And every square inch, every angle that you look at this thing from is made well. The front of it is just this big thing of hard glass that's been laminated, which is probably the biggest downside this thing has, and I will address that in just a second. But like, it has a big thing of laminated glass that is just beautiful. It covers the whole front of the headset, and it really does make it look like you can just see right through it. It looks like you would be able to look through the headset, and it was actually very surprising when I realized that you couldn't, but more on that in just a minute. The entire shell is made out of this hard metal. I'm pretty sure it's aluminum, but it could actually be stainless steel. I'm not sure. It is very, very tough though, and damn near indestructible for this thing's size and frame. It is a very, very good, tough feeling shell. The buttons here are just like on the AirPods Maxes. They're very clicky, and the digital crown has a very smooth kind of like click, 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 click mechanism when you turn it around. It is super unbelievably satisfying. The sides here are made of this like kind of plasticky rubber material with a metal like wire frame underneath it, so they hold their shape, but they're very easily flexible. So if you have a different sized head, they can comfortably flex a little bit in order to fit your head well. And these things right here are the drivers. This is the speaker, and that is the speaker hole. But I'm actually not sure how this works and why there's this big metal thing here. My guess is that that has something to do with the actual speaker mechanism, but I don't really know. And right here is where the actual head strap attaches, and that's where the battery attaches. And as for the inside of the headset over here, look at this. It's made out of this super soft mesh. It's incredibly gross because I've been using this thing a lot. But it's made out of this very soft, like cushy mesh fabric. It feels like a plushie, and you can very lightly feel all of the internal mechanisms in there underneath it, and they're just so smooth. And the lenses here are a very good size and a very good shape. They actually match the shape of your eyes perfectly, unless you have like really, really strangely shaped eyes, to the point where when you look through it, it gives you a wide enough field of vision to where eventually you actually forget that you have this thing on your head. Yeah, sure, there's a little bit of cutoff around the sides, but it's not nearly as intrusive as something like this that actively cuts off your vision and makes it look like you're looking through a scope. So like, it's built perfectly. There's absolutely nothing wrong with it. Incorrect. There is one big issue that it has, which completely destroyed the first gens of these that were going out, for a reason that I think I have figured out, and I will get into in just a second. The glass is laminated on the outside of it, not on the inside like you would expect. What does that mean? This is an absolute smudge factory. If any singular tiny thing touches this, it will smudge, no matter what. This thing smudges so easily, it's not even funny, and that is the reason why they give you this big protective sock thing over here, which is made incredibly well and has this sort of vinyl texture on the front of it and this super soft plushy texture on the inside. Like, this thing alone is made very well. I would absolutely get these things for other VR headsets if I could, and if they had this sort of thing in glass, just because it feels nice and it feels tougher. And now I can grab this thing, I can slap it, I can do whatever I want. But the thing is, this also functions as a dust cover. You see, if I open this up, you can see those are vent ports. Two gigantic holes in the top of the headset, and dust absolutely loves to get in there like it's nobody's freaking business. So if you leave this thing sitting without this on, dust will just sink in there like it's nobody's business. And then when you use the headset, it tends to get hot. Very, very hot. And if there's a bunch of dust in there, that dust is just gonna be cooking, and it's gonna incinerate this thing from the inside out. So what is the significance here? Glass loves to expand when it heats up, and even more so does the laminate. So a lot of people began to notice a tiny line starting to emerge from the bottom that would work its way up the very center of the headset. And that only happened when you didn't use this thing accordingly, and when the headset got full of dust, rust and eventually got too hot, and as such, the glass expanded, and as such, people had to shell out 800 of their hard-earned ducats to replace it. That's what you get for not following the rules. And after that, the only other thing to note is the fact that when you actually look through these, you're not looking out the front of the headset, and that's what I originally thought this thing was doing. I thought that this was kind of just Apple's version of the Microsoft HoloLens product, which was an AR headset, which meant that it had a big forehead on it that would project everything down onto a sheet of glass. And I was genuinely impressed when I saw the frame of this thing, because look at how much sleeker and how much nicer looking this is than the HoloLens. The HoloLens is one of the fuggliest pieces of technology that you can possibly strap to your face, and this one feels way better. No, it's a VR headset. All the internals are right in front of your face, and you are actually looking at two screens that project out of a bunch of cameras sticking out of the front of the headset. And granted, those look so good that it's not even funny. You're looking out of two micro OLED 4K displays, one for each eye. So genuinely, you will forget that you have this thing on your head, unless you have the cameras turned on and it's dark outside. But I will address that more in just a moment when we get to the software. For now though, let's address the bullet points of all of the accessories. First of all, the charging cable. You wouldn't expect something like this to be made nice, but it genuinely is. The charging cable has this kind of vinyl braiding on it, and it feels incredibly tough and indestructible. And I've never found that it kind of gets stuck holding its shape like a lot of Apple's charging cables do. So no matter how much you fiddle with this thing and fold it around, it still goes back to a nice shape, and there's very few creases that are left in it. Like this one right here will probably go away after just a few minutes. There we go, now it's not there anymore. But like genuinely, this cable feels incredibly good, and so does the one that attaches to the battery. In fact, the battery cable feels even better. It is thicker than the charging cable by an absolute noticeable landslide, and it feels even better. This one is way better at holding its shape, and both connectors feel really good, like this big metal end to it, and the other side is also made of metal. Like, the cables feel fantastic with this thing. As for the battery, it's basically just this big block full of aluminum that has the battery inside of it, and you can see how the battery went in because there's a crease that goes around the edge. But basically what you do with this is you plug this in, and it snaps, and then the battery turns on anytime you move it around. So if you end up moving this thing a lot, that might actually kill the battery faster. But it doesn't really matter, because most of the time this is either going to be sitting in one spot or you're going to be using it in your pocket, unless you're traveling with it, but then again, you're probably going to be charging it anyway. And then this charges with USB-C on the same side as the cable. So you can charge it while having it in your pocket, not needing to worry about cables being bunched up in your pocket. It's a very streamlined experience. The only thing that doesn't actually feel any better than a basic thing is the charging brick. It's an Apple charging brick. There's really nothing to say here. It feels pretty good, and it's got a USB-C cable in the front. So if you didn't have any USB-C ports, here you go. Now you have one, and you can use this for anything. And it actually charges a bit faster than my iPhone charging brick. So I actually use this thing for pretty much everything now. So good on you, Apple. You actually improved something with this thing. Then we have the light seal cushions. Ignore how nasty they look. I've literally just used this headset that much. I need to wash these. But genuinely, this thing just feels like a sponge pillow. It is so unbelievably soft and cushiony. It feels fantastic. This one is thicker. The reason there's two is because this one is just a round pillow thing, while this one is actively flat on the front of it so that it doesn't smush against your face more. This one is more comfortable for short-term usage. This one is a little bit less comfortable when you're just gonna wear it for like 15 or 20 minutes, but it does feel better in the long run. This one applies a little bit too much pressure to your face, so usually you're gonna be using the smaller one, but genuinely, these are just really good, and they're made out of this flexible rubbery plastic material, so they can just kind of swivel around, and they're very malleable. And if you're wondering what these little pegs are, they're actually magnets which connect to the actual light seal. That is this thing. And this thing is the only real important changing piece of this headset when you actually buy one of these from Apple. You see, the light seal needs to be the right shape of your head, and this curve isn't going to be perfect for everyone. So there are a whole bunch of slightly different curves, slightly longer ones, slightly shorter ones, slightly flatter ones, and when you actually get this, they scan your face to see which one is going to fit the closest. It's never been perfect. I find that a little bit of light leaks into the sides of the light seal here, but it's not breaking the experience. Oh my god. It's not breaking the experience or anything. It's still very usable, and this thing is made so good it's not even funny. Again, this is like a vinyl mesh fabric that is just very smushy. Look at this. You can see it's just very soft and very cushiony. And the whole front of it is made out of this metal alloy with these exposed magnets on it that just clip everything together absolutely flawlessly. And it has these little guides for the magnets on the light seal cushion to fit into. And on the inside, it's just the darkest black you can possibly imagine to make sure that it stays dark on the inside of the headset so that you can see properly out of the lenses with minimal light leaking in. And to cover your nose, again, we have to address this giant stupid idiot. Look at this. It's got this like rubber thing that is kind of locked into one position, and it's these two rubber folds that really get in the way a lot. Well, this one is just this very soft, light piece of fabric that can just kind of mush around in order to get the perfect seal every single time. And how do you attach this thing to the headset? I mean, obviously, it's going to be extremely difficult because, I mean, where are the attachment points? Simple. It's on the headset now. Oh, you want to know how this goes on? I'll show you. It is the most satisfying and simple procedure to put this thing together. And we're still not done talking about stuff yet. This headset comes with not one, but two headband straps, and they look completely different for a very specific reason. This is the dual loop band, and most of the time you're going to be using this one if you're going to be using the headset for a long period of time, which you probably are because it takes a few minutes to turn on and you want to make it worth your while. But when you do that, you lose the ability to adjust things on the spot. It's got these two straps, one on the front and one on the back, that you have to carefully adjust in order to get just the right shape of your head, and it can sometimes take a while to get just the perfect adjustment. But once you do, it is very comfortable. While this one is a more temporary solution that is better for usage if you're just going to be using the headset for short periods of time, because it is adjustable with this big knob on the side. You can twist it in whatever which way you want, and eventually you get it to a point where you can have it open. I always get this wrong the first time. As you adjust it, it extends more and it perfectly locks to a determined angle. So once you actually put it on and you tighten this, you will feel the pressure of it pulling on your face, and you can adjust it to be perfect every single time. You can manually tweak it while it's on your head. It's very, very nice and luxurious, but it's just one band that goes around the back of your head. So it's got no support on the top of your head, which is why this one works better for long periods of time. Because this is really comfortable for a short period of time, but this one is just going to work better for a long period of time. Either way, these are also made extremely well. This one isn't made with the same kind of vinyl fabric, but it's made out of this really soft, plushy mesh that just feels really, really good with these metal clippy straps things all over it. And same thing here, it's got metal straps that attach to the headset. While this one is made out of the kind of mesh vinyl, but it folds in on itself like this, which is just like what you see on the headsock thing. And it feels like a plushie. It is so unbelievably soft and cushy. It is genuinely the most comfortable head strap I've ever seen on a VR thing. Again, as I said, oh yeah, you could just attach it like this. Super freaking easy to put on. And you just pull on these orange little tabs that you see. And where is it? Right there. And it comes right off. Unbelievably easy to switch things out. Like, again, the build quality here is almost worth the price tag for itself. And now we get to the cleaning cloth, which not a lot of people are going to be interested in, but genuinely, this is a really nice cleaning cloth, and you're going to be using it because, again, the front of this thing is a absolute smudge factory, and so are the lenses on the inside. I have a problem with dandruff, and a lot of times little tiny flecks of dandruff will get on the lenses, and I use this thing to clean them off. I'm not sure if you're supposed to do that, but hey, it works, and if it ain't broke, don't fix it, so there we go. It hasn't failed on me yet. But that's not really all. I mean, the last one is kind of redundancy. It's the instructions. They're just made really nice, and I wanted to talk about them. They come in this big sleeve, and they're actually made really, really nice. I use these things as like a mat. I actually want to use this as a mouse pad because of how nice it is. And the printing on the inside of it is really, really good, and it kind of just shows product pictures. And it does tell you what it does and how to use it. I mean, you're not going to be doing that much because most of the confusion is going to come when you actually take a look at the software, which, speaking of which, it's software time! The entire Vision Pro operating system consists of hand gestures and eye tracking motions. And that's basically how this thing does everything, because there's no controllers built in. So even though you can link up Bluetooth controllers, it's meant to be used just freehand, which is, in my opinion, the best way to do anything, because I hate having to lug around controllers, and it's one of the biggest reasons why I don't like using the Vive Cosmos over there, because if you drop those controllers, you gotta take the headset off, and you gotta find the control, and you gotta put the stupid wrist strap on, and it's an absolute pain. So not having to worry about controllers is an absolute pro in this thing's favor. But that also comes at a price. When you first get this thing, you are going to be absolutely bamboozled by the operating software, and you're going to have absolutely no idea what you're doing. To the point where I actually found it very entertaining to watch other people try and fumble through the operating software when they didn't do the demo in the store or had the thing unboxed in the Apple Store. They genuinely do demos for this thing just so that you can understand how it works. And the first time you put the headset on, they offer a long step-by-step tutorial on how to do absolutely everything. They even offer online seminars for how to do this stupid nugget. That's genuinely how confusing the operating software is to a lot of people. And I understand that, because when you are given something like an iPhone, you can kind of understand, oh, you touch here to do this, and you touch there to do that. But when you're given a hologram that is floating in front of you like 4 feet away from your face, your first instinct is, oh, well, I touch it, but it's all the way over there. I can't reach out and touch it. What do? I have to get up and go over there? Can I just like blink to look at it? What do I do? Oh, am I supposed to do this? Why isn't it working? Why isn't it touching the app that I wanted it to touch? Oh, I'm doing this. I look like Mr. Krabs. Why isn't it working? What am I supposed to do? And that's where a lot of people lose their mind. And the way that this thing works is actually really simple. You look at what you want, and you do this. And there you go. It opens apps, closes apps, you can type on keyboards and stuff. Everything is meant by looking at things and clicking your fingers together like that. And this motion is the most memed hand gesture in human history this year. My friends give me so much crap when I have this thing on. They call me an Apple boy, they call me a cyborg, and they just make fun of me because I have to do this to do almost everything. And I find it funny, I play along with it, but I can actually see people getting kind of annoyed when everyone is making fun of them for just using the product the way it was meant to be used. And I mean, to be fair, that more comes down to just the price of this thing and what it's actually offering to you, which I'll get into in just a second. But like, doing this is very intuitive. You just kind of get used to it, and it works. And once you've actually gotten accustomed to it, it becomes easier to use than an iPad. I would argue that this thing is more intuitive to use than an iPad for 90% of cases, until you try to eat popcorn while watching a movie. That's when everything falls apart, because you have to grab popcorn like this, and a lot of times this thing will confuse you for, oh my goodness, do you want to pause your movie, hey? Okay, I'll pause the movie for you. No, I don't want you to pause. I'm just taking a bite of popcorn. Oh my goodness, I'm sorry. It's my bad. I didn't mean to do it. Oh my goodness, are you trying to fast forward? Don't worry, you'll fast forward at 4 times speed and make you completely lose your place. Hey. It is actually really annoying to try and eat anything while using this, but then again, it's not really entirely designed for just watching movies and eating popcorn and stuff, even though the Disney Plus app does literally have a movie theater. This is supposed to be a spatial computer, which is really just a fancy term for the word VR headset. Virtual reality, augmented reality, potato. It's a computer that you strap to your face. More specifically, it's an iPad that you strap to your face, because this thing runs a modified version of iPad OS. And you know what that means? Yep. It's basically an iPad, which means you can't make calls on it. You can FaceTime people, but only if they also have an Apple device. Which, I mean, that makes sense because it's FaceTime. But what's really confusing is you can only text people who have an Apple device. Half, if not more than half of my texts have completely disappeared off the face of the earth when using this thing, because my friends and family just simply don't have iPhones. And that is the biggest annoyance when trying to do basic communication with this thing. I use Discord for communication most of the time, and this thing definitely works with Discord just fine. I haven't really had any issues with it besides not being able to properly share out the front of my screen when I'm using Discord, but I digress. I mean, it's a thing. They might work it out eventually, but then again, again, knowing Discord and how lazy they are with doing software updates, they're never going to bother. They're never going to do anything with this ever. It's just not going to happen. But the unnecessary communication limit of not being able to contact anyone who doesn't have an Apple device can actually be a very big detriment, because I might sometimes be expecting phone calls from people or text messages from people who just don't happen to have Apple devices. And let's say my phone is charging and I'm already doing work on this. I can't rely on this thing to give me the text messages that those people are going to be sending me, which would otherwise work if they had an iPhone, because a lot of the time, it just isn't going to send through this thing. It's going to be like, oh, I'm sorry, you don't have an iPhone. We're just going to send this back the way it came and send it off to your iPhone instead, which is in the other room charging and I don't have access to right now. And I think that that is the biggest negative when it comes to the software that this thing has. And it's at this point in the video where I really need to make a rather funny and useful comparison. This headset is basically a pair of AirPods Max for your eyeballs. And that really says a lot, because when you really think about it, it really is just a pair of AirPods Max for your eyeballs. If we compare this thing to like this big clunky headset over here, this headset is really big and clunky, but you can link it up to a computer and you can pretty much just make it do whatever you want as just a screen that connects to your computer for it to do what you want it to do. While you can do the same thing with like a pair of Sonys here. These Sonys work just fine as a pair of standalone headphones, but really what they're good at is being connected to a computer and used as your pair of headphones for everyday usage. Unfortunately, that comes at quality control problems, because I mean, they're not made very well and they fall apart after a while, and I really need to replace the ear cups on these because I want to use these things again, but I digress. You are mainly paying for Apple's quality of life here. And these two things right here are genuinely better at just being everyday life accessory products. This is a nicer set of headphones than these, but they cost a whole lot more money. But at the same time, you have to use these as just Bluetooth headphones. You can't really plug these things into a computer to use as wired headphones unless you have all of the stupid dongles that Apple wants you to use, and even then, you're not going to be getting the same sound quality. While this thing is a much nicer built VR headset than something like this, but you are stuck using Apple's proprietary software that you can't really get around unless you completely mod this thing, which Apple has made as hard as possible because they really don't want you using this thing as a VR headset because it's a spatial computer. And I don't mind the idea of this thing being a spatial computer, kind of like what the Meta Quest 3 is trying to do. But the difference is that the Meta Quest 3 is also designed to be a standalone VR headset. So you are getting all of the luxuries of what this thing is trying to do, granted not even remotely as well done as this headset does, because this thing is one of the most flawless pieces of engineering I've seen in terms of like a computer for your face that you could just project holograms around with. But at the same time, you have the ability to play video games with the Meta Quest 3, and you don't have to mod that headset to do anything, and most importantly, it costs $500. You're literally taking $3,000 off of that price tag. I'm just letting that sink in. So what does this thing actually look like to use? Alright, so like this one time I decided that I was tired of just going out into the sunlight and staring directly at the sun, basically looking into a giant flaming ball of gas that was burning my eyes out from the inside out, right? So I decided I wanted to get some sunglasses, because I figured that sunglasses would actually be very helpful. So I wanted to go and get some sunglasses and see how I could do that, and maybe it would help, but I wanted to look at them at the Apple Store, right? Because, I mean, like, Apple is the best company ever. They don't make proprietary software for anything, so, like, you could totally just, like, go down the Apple Store. I mean, maybe they happen to be selling some sunglasses, I don't know, I've been surprised before. But I went down, and it just so happens that they are, in fact, selling sunglasses. So I did go and get myself the pair of sunglasses that they were selling. Unfortunately, it just so happens that that pair of sunglasses cost as much as a used car. I paid as much as a used, like, Hyundai, whatever it was. I don't even know what the car was anymore. So I sold my house in order to pay for the Apple sunglasses. So I've got my sunglasses now, and now I can stare directly into the sun in peace. But at the same time, I don't have a place to live, and these things are starting to run out of battery, so they're actually not going to be very good sunglasses for much longer. So, can I borrow $5 for sunglasses, please? Oh, I just realized that this place still sucks. Yeah, I want to go to the Bahamas. So what is this thing on the top of my head? Oh, what if I... Oh. Now that's better. I would happily die here. Oh, wow. Would you look at that? It's actually really, really fun and enjoyable to use for just regular basic things. It's almost like this is a much nicer VR headset than the stupid idiot that I've been using for the last 7 or 8 years. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. Using this thing for just doing regular iPad things is so much more fun than using an iPad. It's not even comparable. This thing is just way more pleasant to use, even though you are paying through the nose for it. But here's the thing about the price. It's gonna change. Do you guys know what virtuality is? No? Well, basically, it was the first commercially available VR headset. It was the size of a car, and it cost about as much as a car did back in the 80s when it came out. It was this gigantic, oversized, complicated brick that you would strap to your face that had this humongous chair built into it that housed the computer parts for it. It was incredibly uncomfortable. It barely worked the way it was supposed to, and you had to sit in the chair, and it was super, limited to what you were able to do with it. Not to mention, it would absolutely cause eye strain and genuinely be a chore and a half to use for more than 5 minutes at a time. You would have to take it off and take breaks, which is why the only place that ever carried it was arcades, because that was the only place where using it for 5 minutes and then taking it off was completely justified after you'd paid so much for it, and it was so heavy that once you got it into a spot you were happy with, you really didn't want to have to move it anywhere else. And nowadays, we got this thing. We got the Meta Quest 3. We got the Meta Quest Pro. We got other things like the Vive, what is it called? The one that looks like the glasses, the Vive Elite XDR, whatever you want to call it. This thing. We've got this thing right here, which cost an absolute fraction of the price that original monstrosity cost. That's kind of the same position that this thing is in right now. This is in the first version that it's ever going to be in. This big space potato that you strap to your face is going to get cheaper, and it's going to get better at its job, and honestly, it's already pretty good at its job. The issues that I have with this headset never impede on my actual opinion of the headset, besides not being able to text all of my friends. I mean, that is kind of the biggest problem that this thing has. But when it comes to the actual software and the hardware that this thing has and all the stuff that it comes with and everything, I might actually be the only person on the planet who is actually going to argue and say that yes, this price is justified for what you're actually getting. It is insanely nice and competent at its job, and the biggest drawback is the fact that not very many people are going to benefit from the job that it's actually accomplishing. A lot of what this headset is doing is very niche, and not very many people are going to get the same amount of value out of it, and a lot of people are going to feel like they were scammed and return this nugget to the store after being told that it was going to change their life and make it better. No. That's not what this thing does at all. This thing is a tool that you need to use for the thing that it was designed to use for, which in the case of the Vision Pro is basically three-dimensional modeling. I can literally spawn in an F1 race car over my swimming pool. Don't believe me? Watch this. Yup. Yeah, that's amazing. That's actually unbelievable that you're able to do that. And there's not much else that you can do that with at this point because, again, almost every other VR headset on the market, and I say almost because there are super unreasonably expensive ones that do have cameras as nice as this one, that are able to project things that accurately and lock things into place with that amount of confidence in them. That car did not move. None of the holograms that you placed moved. Ever. They even cast shadows onto real-life objects, and the shadows flow accordingly and move around depending on how high up something is. It's actually magical how good this thing is at its job. But there is a drawback. This thing has some of the best lenses I've ever seen in my life. The best cameras it does not have, on the other hand. When you first put this thing on and the thing actually turns on, you're able to see through it, you will immediately be able to tell, yes, you're looking through cameras. You can see the camera noise. You can see artifacts in the distance doing this. Especially if it gets dark, you will see video noise where it's like you'll see the little static appearing in the camera that is just kind of this grainy effect that's always there if you're in a darker environment. If you're in a lighter environment, it tends to go away more, but even then, it doesn't track lighting properly. Like, it's kind of hard for it to track lighting exactly right, especially in that demo that I showed you where I looked directly at the sun. It took a good 4 or 5 seconds for the lighting to adjust properly. At the same time, this is like one of the few things that you can actually like literally look at the sun with and it doesn't hurt because it's just a screen, which is already pretty impressive. But I mean, still, you're looking through cameras and screens. What am I supposed to say there? Of course you can look at the sun. But the cameras aren't magic. They're still cameras. With that said though, the amount of video lag that is between the cameras and the actual display on your eyes is so little that I can't even tell there is any lag. And I would argue that that is more important than actual resolution. If there's no lag and there's no motion blur and the V-Sync is proper, I would say that that is more valuable than having the most amount of pixels that you can see to make it look like you're just staring through sunglasses. Because while yes, you are going to be looking through cameras and screens, it never becomes disorienting. You can use this thing for as long as you want and it never becomes ugly to look through, and you never really get a headache when you take it off. Every once in a while, if I do a lot of Synth Riders or like Fruit Ninja where there's lots of moving objects coming straight at your face and then I take it off, I kind of get that same effect in my eyes as where you look at a swirly thing for a really long time and then look away and your eyes are just kind of doing this. You get that same effect for a few minutes, but then it goes away because that's just how eyesight works. There's no real way to avoid that. And I would say that using this is a lot less disorienting than, again, using this thing. Objectively speaking, this is a better built VR headset than something like this. I would say it's better built than any other VR headset on the market right now. I would argue that it's probably better than the super expensive ones even. But that also comes at the cost of it's wireless and it's an Apple thing and you're using Vision OS, which again, they don't want you to change. So if your goal is to get a VR headset and you want something like this, oh boy, you got your work cut out for you, because not only do you have to spend $4,000 on this headset, but then you have to figure out how to mod it afterwards, which when you're working with something this expensive is pretty risky, and you have a high risk of damaging it or getting it to not work properly, which is why I just installed ALVR and let my computer do all the heavy lifting, because my computer, that thing's a stupid idiot. It needs to be updated anyway. It basically sounds like a Formula 1 car whenever I play Planet Coaster on it, and I'm surprised that the thing hasn't actually caught fire yet. If something happens with that, I can fix it. I can fix it. At the same time though, if you do get this thing working, you basically have the greatest VR headset ever made in the history of the universe, and that probably isn't going to change anytime soon because, like, genuinely, this thing is just made, oh my god, it's so nice. But finally, what do I think of this actual headset? I like it. I like it a lot. And I am one of the few people who I will happily say, I've gotten a ton of usage out of this thing since we bought it back in like April, May, I think we got this thing. And I've literally used it like at least once a week, if not every day, since to do regular work. Schoolwork is easier on this, video recording is easier on this. Basically everything that I do in my everyday life besides video editing is easier on the Vision Pro than it is on my phone or on my iPad. My VR headset nugget thing over here, it cannot replace because you just can't get over the luxury of an analog cable like this. But for a computer that you basically duct tape to your face and use as an iPad for your face that you can project holograms onto in the real world, this is outstanding. I love this thing to death. And if you are interested in something like this that is basically being used as a computer for your face to do heavy lifting style work on that isn't just going to overheat and catch fire, My god, this thing is fun. It just costs an arm and a leg to use. So, yeah, I don't actually think that this thing is a piece of crap. Like, a lot of people will argue that it's because, oh my god, it's Apple. Apple stuff is bad. Hey. It actually is pretty good at its job. It's just that its job is very niche, and if you don't fit into the audience that this thing is designed for, you're not gonna get that much usage out of it. Well, I don't know. Tell me what you guys think in the comments. I'm tired of filming, so I'm gonna take this thing, and I'm going to go and play Synth Riders on it. Bye!